Welcome to the Genealogy Happy Hour, a place where new family historians can learn to document their family histories and celebrate their new discoveries. I'm Amy.
And I'm Penny, and we're here to help you discover your family tree from the beginning. Welcome to episode 107. Today we are going into not uncharted territory, but charted territory. Charted territory. Yes. We're going to be talking about all the different charts and reports that you can do out there.
Well, not all of them.
Not all of them, but some of the more important
Correct.
ones.
The ones that we should be using.
Yes. And don't think this isn't going to be exciting, because this is an exciting topic.
Absolutely. We're going to make it exciting.
We're going to do our best. But first, we have a wine.
Do we have a wine?
We do.
What's our wine?
Our wine is, it's a Rabble wine. I don't know if you remember, like way back when we started this podcast, Rabble was one of my favorite wines.
I do remember.
I love the labels.
The labels are so cool.
They
yes,
are.
I do remember those. It's a good wine.
So this one, Rabble Wines from Paso Robles, where one of my friends is or was last weekend. I was not invited. I'm not talking to her anymore.
Wow, I bet.
So, no, she can make it up to me later. She will. She will. Anyway, this one is a 2020 red wine. And it says it's a delectable red wine, eminently approachable and honest to the core. And their tasting notes are an unconventional blend of Merlot, Cabernet, and Petit Syrah, vibrant aromas of dark cherry, blackberry, and mocha.
Sounds delicious.
Yeah, and again, like I said, my favorite thing is the labels, and this label is an apocalyptic comet falling on the city of Florence, and the labels are renditions of historical woodblock prints from Nuremberg Chronicles depicting Mother Nature's wrath. So they're just
beautiful.
So cool.
Yeah, they are beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's a great wine too.
Yeah. And I'm just going to say one other thing about this description. Every time I say Merlot or hear Merlot, I instantly think of the movie Legally Blonde, where Selma Blair's character Vivian says, bring your own Merlot. And I'm like, what makes you think everybody wants Merlot? But that's all I can think about when I hear the word Merlot.
Well, it's a great wine, so we highly recommend it. All right, but let's hear from our sponsor quickly, and then we will jump into charting.
Have you ever wished you could step back in time and see the world your ancestors lived in? With newspapers.com, you can. It's like having a time machine right at your fingertips. With a simple search, you can explore more than 1 billion pages of historical newspapers dating from 1690 to 2025, from the US, the UK, Canada, Australia, and beyond. Uncover the details that bring your family's story to life in birth notices, wedding announcements, and obituaries. But it's not just about facts. It's about experiencing the moments they lived through. Imagine reading the same headlines they saw, or finding an article about your great-grandfather's farm. Newspapers.com doesn't just show you history, it helps you feel it. Start your journey today at newspapers.com, because sometimes the past isn't just history, it's a story waiting to be discovered. Make infinite discoveries today on newspapers.com. Use promo code HAPPYHOUR for a 20% discount on your subscription.
Many family historians and genealogists have beautiful charts framed and hanging on the wall that proudly announce the ancestry of their family. I have a handsomely framed bow tie pedigree chart hanging near the entrance of my home. And I have not created yet, but I still want to create one of those gorgeous, beautiful colored fan charts. You've seen those,
I have,
right?
those are
Advertised.
really pretty.
Gorgeous. Yep. However, genealogical charts are not just wall decor. They are important tools in the genealogist toolbox that help keep research on track, visualize multiple dates and places, and point up inconsistencies that appear in research findings. They can help us sort families living in close proximity and track deviations and even migration patterns. So let's talk about some of the typical types of charts that genealogical researchers should be using.
Yes. Before we jump into that, one of the things you said, using these charts, once you get them done and you're looking at it, you can then easily see what information you're missing. At least on those key vital vital records.
I mean, I did just like a draft of the fan chart, and I was shocked at how many empty spaces I still have on that to fill up before I can really make it look beautiful. So I still have a lot of research to go. So I can definitely, these are like big picture type things.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, we're talking about fan charts and pedigree and bow tie charts. Let's go into those a little bit more. And because I think to me, those are kind of the big picture things. They're looking at your big picture research rather than the nitty gritty, which is important because like in my case, I looked at that fan chart and I was like, oh gosh, I'm missing a lot here, or I've got to, this is where I want to research next because I'm missing pieces there. So, and like I said, the fan chart is not like the fan club. This is the fan chart. It is a semicircle. And it's a more, I think, what I want to say, it's a more concise way to communicate all the direct ancestors in a smaller space than the traditional pedigree chart.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So it can be a little confusing at first when you're looking at it because it starts with the individual, you, let's say, in the circle in the middle, and then it goes to your parents, and then it just fans out from there.
You're kind of in a semicircle.
Correct.
So
yes.
you're in the little half semicircle in the middle. Then the 50-50, your parents, and
right.
Mm-hmm.
And they're really pretty, but and they can be multi-chromatic, or they can also be black and white too. Most of the time, you don't see them except when they're displayed on the wall beautifully. Pedigree charts are what we normally see. Those start with the subject individual at the far left, and they start adding each generation to the right, and then they just grow exponentially out towards the right hand side.
And these are direct. Your
direct line.
Answers. You're
correct.
Not seeing all the extra people on there.
Nope. These are just your direct line ancestors going back in time. So it's basically like the jaws of an alligator opening up as you get further and further down the line.
Yes. And I think print-wise, I like your bow tie because it's going in both directions, for you and your husband.
Correct.
And then going out.
Correct. Yes, a bow tie pedigree chart is one that takes two pedigree charts. They meet in the middle, one being one spouse and one being the other spouse, and on out. Then you have your children down below.
And visually, that's pretty on a wall. I think the other one, like half of that is not as attractive.
Correct.
It's almost prettier if it's done vertically, like a tree.
Going right.
To look like a tree. You're at the bottom. Your family goes up to the top.
In ancestry, for instance, you can have either view, right? The vertical or the horizontal.
The vertical then, but will show more people. And I find the vertical view on Ancestry to be more distracting.
It's more difficult, I think, too.
There's too many things to look at. Wait, I don't have this. What was that?
The other thing that we have traditionally with the pedigree chart is the numbering system that usually goes along with that. The traditional numbering system. What's that called, Penny?
Anantafel?
Very nice.
That is. I know. When you see that word, you're like, what? It's German.
It's German for just ancestor table, and it's sometimes called the Sosa Stradonitz. Also, the numbering system as well.
Yes, I've seen that a lot.
You start with one, and then you're the individual, or you are one, and then your parents, your father's two, your mother's three, and then every generation, basically the numbers double from there, going forward.
And you'll see that a lot if you get a book of your whatever the name is. Like I've got a Bartram genealogy book, and it's all numbered. Everybody's got a number, but it's so helpful because if you've got a number in the back, and you can work your way back through your people if you know how to work those numbers.
Exactly, correctly. And those are good, again, like I said, for tracking some information. Like I like to use the pedigree chart to identify which lines are my patriot ancestors, so I can go back and say, okay, this is patriot ancestor, that's the patriot ancestor, or these are my immigrant ancestors, so I know where the line stops, or as far as immigration goes, or things like that. But
when you use those, do you color code your charts? Do you color code them?
I use like for the Patriots, I have like a clip art thing that I put there,
Okay.
or an immigrant, so I use like
Got
a
it.
symbol or something like that. So I don't color code them. No,
Okay.
I don't. Now the bow tie, again, we talked about that. That's first. It's really nice to show the combination of two families coming together. But again, these are like I said, big picture charts. Use them to track your ancestors. You might see migration patterns, like this great grandfather was born here, and then the grandfather was born here. You can see how that goes, but you can't see a whole lot of other information than that. So it's sort of big picture. Keep it up there. Figure out where you're going to go next.
Right.
So, and I only put now. Of course, I have in, let's say, Ancestry, I have a tree that's a working tree. So I might throw some people in there and think, well, let me see, maybe this person is the person I'm looking for, and I'll throw them in there. But I don't put those on my master pedigree chart.
Mm-hmm.
Like the one that's printed and beautiful and hanging in the hallway. Those are the people that I've actually documented, and I know for sure
It is confirmed.
those are my peeps.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
And there's some blanks there, and there's blanks that I've since filled in, but those are just the people that I know. But some of the
I was going to say that if you're doing an Anantafel report, you can there can be more information on that one.
In the
and I'm
report.
saying report, it's not a chart. Charts are different from reports. Yeah.
Yep.
Stay focused, Penny. We're on.
We're not talking about reports. That's a whole
We're on
other. That's a whole other issue. Well, and one of the things that I think goes is not looked at as often, and I know that I'm guilty of this as well, is relying on the family group sheet. The family group sheet reflects all the data for each family group. So you've got the father, the mother, all the children, and this is where you tell at least an outline of the story of each family, and that includes all the vital data, birth, marriage, death, places, and the source citations. This is where you have all your source citations. This little sheet shows you the information that you have found and where you found it. And it's going to also include information about the residences, where they lived, every place that they lived, and what their life was like, what their occupation was, their religion, religious affiliation, their education, military service, even their parents' names. So it's a complete snapshot of the family and the individuals within the family whom you have identified and documented. So it's something it's super important. It's back in the day before you could, I guess, before we had really were able to take computers and things like that on our research trips, I would print out the family group sheets and take those into the repository with me, because that's all you had to rely on.
And writing it by hand.
Correct. Exactly. Writing them by hand, typing them out. My late husband's great aunt, she never wrote up her research. She was the family genealogist in his family on his mother's side. And she never wrote up the story of the family that I have seen, but she had these fabulous family group sheets. And her great niece and I were able to use her family group sheets to very quickly then verify the information that she had there. Know very quickly that we could depend on the information she had. She didn't have a lot of source citations, unfortunately, because that would have been really helpful, but we were able to then use those to then really construct the family, and then we had to go find the sources. So
yeah, but at least you knew they were there. I mean, was that she had something, she found something, and you were able to.
Correct. So in the very least, those are what we need to, those are the backbone of our research, and that's really reflecting the research that we have done. And then of course you have all the documentation to go beyond that, but if you just wanted someone to have an overview of your research for a certain family, that's what you would show them first.
And these forms you can find in a lot of places. A good copy of a family group sheet.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot online that you can download for free. Family Search has some that you can download. And
Cindy's List.
Correct, Cindy's List. And then also if you're using a genealogy software program, they're in there as well. I think we're going to talk about those maybe in another episode. Another thing that you should be using, which is really cool, it can be tedious or seem tedious, is the census comparison charts.
Oh, do tell.
And I know we spent a lot of time talking about census recently, but, and we'll put a link to it, Ancestor Roundup has created a free download, and I think theirs goes from the 1850 census to like 1910, but then you can just add on other sheets or other columns to compare your ancestor, follow your ancestor through those censuses and compare the entries, how they were enumerated in 1850 versus how they were enumerated, let's say, in 1880. Who has entered the family group, who has left the family group, has the spouse's name changed. You cannot start tracking all of those.
Where they lived is the first thing comes to my mind when I was tracking my Preston family moving from New York over to Ohio, Indiana. 4 brothers, they all migrated. They all ended up in different places, but who went when? When were they in what place?
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. And then are 2 people enumerated? There are times when 2 people are enumerated in 2 different places, but usually, if you're looking for, this is a great tool. If you're looking for, let's say, an Edward Jones, and there's like 5 Edward Jones in this city, you can start pulling out which Edward Jones is. If you've got similar names, you start tracking them, and you can figure out which ones are yours. Which ones are your subject and which ones aren't.
Right.
So, those are really very useful, especially if you've got partial families being enumerated at a time.
Great.
So the other thing that I would say is just this last week, a colleague at work and I are working on a case at work, and we wanted to find this family in the 1950 census, and because the couple had gotten married in 1947, and so we used Steve Morris's enumeration finding tool because we had the address from the city directory, and of course his tool doesn't tell you exactly which enumeration district. You've got to, he gives you a broad range. I think we had 10 different enumerations districts that we had to look at because of the street address. And so she started at one end, I started at the other, and we got, this is it, we're getting closer. The house numbers are getting closer, and we finally found the house number, and it said not home. And then, which was okay, it wasn't okay. There were some others in there that said not home, but then it said see sheet, and it cited a sheet.
Ooh,
right?
Okay.
So the guy came back and they were home, but he recorded them on another sheet. Ours said not home, sheet blank. They were never enumerated. But that's information that you need to still record in your research to show that you did look, you did find, and they were not enumerated in that particular census. So,
wow.
But yeah, it was excitement, and then complete let down.
How often does that happen?
Let down.
Okay.
Other charts that we should be using, timelines. I know we
love timelines.
We've talked about those before. Timelines are super important. How many times have you seen a ancestry or somebody on ancestry and the parent is younger than the child that they have in their chart? If they had done a timeline, they would have quickly seen that can't be the parent because those birth and death dates don't match.
So listen to this. So I'm going to try to remember because I've got my paperwork somewhere else. We had a listener send us an email about looking at using the census when we were, our last one using the census, and he had such a great suggestion was to not just look at the people but the the house, like a place that you lived, and follow that one. Oh, not the census, it was the newspaper. See, I didn't write it down, and I knew I'm all excited about it because I used a timeline on this. Using newspapers.com to follow your house. Just putting in the address of your house and see what pops up. OMG.
What?
So at first I started doing my ancestors' houses, and it was just like, meh, maybe a hit here or there, and I'm like, let me put in my house that I lived in when I grew up in New Jersey. And it popped up, the first thing that popped up was that this woman died there.
What?
She was young, she was 47. I was like, I knew it. I knew somebody died in that house. Like, I could feel the presence as a child. So,
wow.
So I wanted to. I started looking at the census. This is where the census comes in. Who lived in that house in the 50s, in the 40s, in the 30s, in the 20s, 10. And I did a big timeline, but to fill in between, because these are all different people. And this woman, I think, died in 1947. There was somebody else in there in 50. And I was like, okay. But I found numerous articles of people that got married and their new residence was, and that address, or came back from their honeymoon and resided here. And, so I think there were 2 or 3 weddings that listed the house as their new residence. I can't even remember, but it was great.
That's so really cool.
And again, I'm so sorry. I think his name was Jim, and I know I'm going to mess that up, but maybe it was. Thank you for that, because that was a lot of fun doing that timeline chart of the
house and who lived in the house.
That's
really cool.
Yeah,
that is really cool. So so timelines are super critical, especially if we're trying to figure out, the possibilities of fitting a child into the family, or if they were able to live, where they were living in one census versus another census, or how that movement happened, and is that they're still the right family. So timeline's super important in that. And then the last chart that we're going to talk about is, and we can't say this enough, those research charts, the research logs. We've got to be filling those out. I know we're cringing. We're cringing.
It's tedious, but
it is tedious. But you don't want to go back and have to, and
oh my gosh,
there's so many places to look. You don't need to be going and looking 2 or 3 times in the same spot.
How many times do you do that?
Correct.
Like, I just saw this.
Yep.
You didn't write it down. So
absolutely. I think there was a piece of information that you had seen and you're still looking for it because you can't.
Because I didn't write it down.
Because you didn't write down where you saw it.
Yeah.
Correct. How many times we go back and back and back because we didn't take down all the information correctly. So look at your charts. Really, fill out those family group sheets. Look at those family group sheets. You can make them if you're using a genealogy software. Fill them out, download them, and start pouring all that information into those, because that's your that's the meat and potatoes of all of your research.
Yeah. And I will say too, before we wrap this up, we got an email just last night from Family Circles Diagram. They have a poster of a gentleman created this because he couldn't find what he wanted. It's a circle chart of your family. When you were talking about printing out the fan chart and the bow tie, this is a complete circle, and it can have all different relations in there. It's really pretty, and it works with Geni, Geni. If you have
online,
your online tree, if you have your stuff up on there, you can just import it right over into this, and it'll create this beautiful poster. And I will put a link to that.
And then put a link to the Ancestor Roundup so that everyone can download that free Excel chart, which is super handy, and you don't have to make up your own. So anyway, until next time,
cheers.
Thank you for listening. Please email us with any questions or comments at genealogyhappyhour@gmail.com.
Visit our website, www.genealogyhappyhour.com, for additional resources, books, and wines. Don't forget to drink responsibly
and never drink around genealogical documents.